The night was electric. Celebrities, moguls, and high-profile influencers filled the sleek, luxurious venue, their laughter and chatter rising above the deep bass of the music that pulsed through the walls. The VIP section was like a scene straight out of a Hollywood movie. Glittering chandeliers, golden accents, and tables adorned with expensive bottles of champagne. It was a space reserved for the elite, a world where only the most influential could gain access. And among the glimmering crowd was none other than Will Smith, the towering figure of the entertainment industry, known not only for his legendary career, but for his charismatic and genuine personality. By his side, as always, was his stunning wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. A powerhouse in her own right, Jada exuded grace and strength, the perfect match for Will's undeniable charm. They had arrived together, the cameras flashing as they entered, flashing smiles for the crowd. The air was electric with anticipation, and everyone in the room knew they were witnessing two icons in their prime. It felt like everything was perfect. People laughed, sipped their drinks, and reveled in the glamour of it all. But moments like this can often be fleeting. As Will leaned over to whisper something to Jada, he excused himself briefly, heading toward the restroom. It was just another typical night in their high-profile world. But as Will stepped away, no one could have predicted that what was about to unfold in the VIP section would leave everyone in the room in shock and disbelief. Jada, standing alone, didn't know it yet, but her night was about to take a dangerous, unpredictable turn. Will Smith slipped away from the bustling crowd with his usual calm demeanor. It was a casual moment, nothing out of the ordinary. Celebrities like him often take quick breaks to the restroom during events, a few minutes to catch their breath before jumping back into the whirlwind. No one paid him much attention as he made his way through the velvet ropes and into the hallway, his presence almost invisible amidst the flurry of activity. Jada, standing gracefully in the center of the VIP section, wasn't bothered by his absence. She took a sip of her champagne, casually chatting with a few familiar faces. The spotlight wasn't on her this time. She was just another guest, blending in, enjoying the night as much as anyone else. In a room filled with the world's most influential people, it was easy to fade into the background. People were busy with their own conversations, their own lives, and no one seemed to notice that Will had stepped out. For a brief moment, Jada was alone, just a beautiful, unassuming figure in the VIP section, until everything was about to change. The next few minutes would lead to a confrontation no one saw coming. The bodyguard was a towering figure, muscular, with a stern expression that seemed permanently etched into his face. His job was simple: ensure the safety of the high-profile guests at the event. He had seen his fair share of troublemakers trying to sneak into the VIP section, and he wasn't one to hesitate when it came to handling security breaches. His eyes scanned the crowd, always alert, always ready to act. But in that moment, he made a mistake. He looked across the room and spotted Jada standing alone, looking composed as she sipped her drink. To him, she was just another woman who didn't belong in the exclusive section. She wasn't wearing any VIP wristband. She wasn't surrounded by bodyguards or people of note. He assumed she was an intruder. Without hesitation, he approached her. His heavy footsteps echoed as he neared, his shadow looming over her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice gruff and commanding. "You need to leave. This area is restricted." Jada looked up, taken aback. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm a guest here." She wasn't used to being treated like this, especially in an environment where she should have been respected. But the bodyguard wasn't listening. His face hardened, and before she could explain further, he dismissed her with a cold wave of his hand. "No more talking. You're leaving." Jada's eyes narrowed as the tension in the air thickened. She tried to push back, her voice firm, but he wasn't having it. Without warning, he grabbed her arm with a vice-like grip. The shock of it hit her immediately. She had been taken by surprise, and now she found herself struggling against his strength. "Let go of me," Jada shouted, trying to pull free, but his grip was relentless. She wasn't used to this kind of treatment. She tried to push him away, but he simply tightened his hold and began to drag her toward the exit, not caring about who she was or the scene he was causing. The room seemed to go silent as people watched in disbelief, unsure of what was happening. Jada's heart raced as she fought to break free from his grasp. But it was clear, the situation was escalating, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Jada's mind raced as the bodyguard's grip tightened around her arm, dragging her with brute force. Her heart pounded in her chest, and every instinct within her screamed to break free. She wasn't just some random woman being tossed around. She was Jada Pinkett Smith, a woman with her own power, her own voice, and she wasn't going to let anyone treat her like this. Not even an overzealous bodyguard. "Let go of me," she shouted again, her voice sharper this time, a mixture of frustration and shock. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, but none of them were stepping in to help. It was as though they were waiting for someone to step in, waiting for the moment to pass. But Jada wasn't just going to let this moment pass. Not like this. She twisted her body, using every ounce of strength she had to wrench her arm free from his grip. But the bodyguard wasn't relenting. His face was a mask of stone, as if this was just another routine security matter to him. He was determined to remove her from the VIP section, no matter the cost. "You need to move," he barked, his voice growing more aggressive with each word. The room grew tense, the hum of conversation now replaced by nervous murmurs. Jada's hands were slick with sweat, her pulse quickening as she struggled against him. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, disbelief, but also fear. Fear that this man, this stranger, could get away with treating her this way. Fear that no one in that room would stand up for her. But Jada wasn't backing down. The bodyguard's patience wore thin. His grip tightened even further for a while, and in a sudden fit of rage, he slapped Jada across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the room, causing the air to go still. Jada's head snapped to the side from the impact, her cheek burning, the sting of the slap sharp and disorienting. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Jada's eyes fluttered open, her face flushed with a mix of pain and fury. She stood there, stunned, hurt by the unexpected aggression. But more than anything, she was angry. Angry that this man had dared to lay a hand on her. The crowd was silent, waiting for something to happen. But Jada, she was done waiting, her eyes locked onto the bodyguards. In that moment, she wasn't just a woman being dragged across a room. She was a force, a mother, a wife, someone who would not let injustice slide. She squared her shoulders, standing tall despite the sting of the slap. "You think you can just do that to me?" she spat, her voice steady despite the raw emotion that churned inside her. The bodyguard froze for just a second, as if unsure of how to respond. That second was enough. Jada wasn't just going to walk away quietly. This was far from over. The sound of the slap echoed through the VIP section like a thunderclap, stopping everyone in their tracks. A sudden hush fell over the room, as if the music itself had hit pause. Guests who had been engrossed in their own conversations now turned their heads, drawn to the scene unfolding in front of them. Whispers spread like wildfire, their murmurs bouncing off the polished walls of the venue. Jada stood frozen for a split second, her cheek still stinging from the brutal slap. Her hand instinctively went to her face, but there was no time to recover before the bodyguard tried to drag her again. The situation had gone from bad to worse in an instant, and now everyone could see it. The tension in the room was palpable as eyes darted between Jada and the bodyguard. The event organizer, a sleekly dressed woman with wide eyes, rushed over with urgency. She tried to intervene, her voice soft at first, attempting to de-escalate the situation. "What's going on here? Is everything all right?" she asked, her tone professional but laced with concern. The bodyguard, however, wasn't backing down. His eyes were locked on Jada as though she was an obstacle to be removed, no matter who she was. But the silence didn't last long. Will Smith had just stepped back into the VIP area, expecting to return to a calm night. He scanned the room for Jada and immediately froze. His gaze shifted to the commotion near the edge of the section. His heart stopped when he saw her, the woman being manhandled, the one being disrespected and hurt. His wife. The shocking realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just some random altercation. This was personal. His wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, was being attacked. Anger flooded his veins. No more waiting. Will's protective instincts surged to the forefront as he rushed to her side, ready to confront the situation head-on. Will Smith's mind was a blur of disbelief and anger as he took in the scene before him. His heart raced, his pulse thundering in his ears. The moment he saw Jada, his wife, being manhandled by the bodyguard, something inside him snapped. His first instinct was to rush to her, but he didn't sprint. He stormed. His steps were deliberate and firm, as though every muscle in his body was focused on getting to her, protecting her. As he moved through the crowd, Will's presence seemed to part the sea of onlookers. It wasn't just the celebrity status that commanded attention, it was the sheer intensity that radiated from him. His face was a mixture of shock and fury, but Will wasn't a man who lost control easily. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to scream. The very fact that he was there, striding towards the scene, was enough to demand everyone's attention. The room fell silent, as if it was holding its breath in anticipation. The bodyguard didn't see it coming. He had been so focused on removing Jada from the VIP section that he hadn't even noticed Will's approach until he was nearly upon him. Will's eyes locked onto the bodyguards with a fury that sent a chill down the man's spine. In that moment, Will wasn't just an actor, a superstar, or a famous face. He was a husband, a father, a protector. And in that instant, he was a man who would not let injustice slide, not even for a second. Without saying a word, Will stepped up, his stance powerful and unwavering. The bodyguard took a step back, his posture faltering as he registered who he had just tried to manhandle. It hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just some random woman he had been trying to throw out. This was Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife. A look of disbelief crossed the bodyguard's face. His arrogance crumbled in that instant, realizing just how badly he had messed up. Will didn't need to raise his voice. He just stood there, his presence enough to make the bodyguard tremble under the weight of his own mistake. Will's gaze remained unyielding, daring the man to challenge him. The tension in the room was thick, the air heavy with disbelief as Will stood firm, his eyes locked on the bodyguard. Without missing a beat, the event organizers sprang into action, quickly signaling for additional security to intervene. A few moments later, 2 more guards appeared, rushing toward the scene with authority. "Step aside," one of them said sharply, addressing the bodyguard. His voice was cold, professional. There was no room for negotiation. The bodyguard, now fully aware of the gravity of his actions, could only stand there, stunned. He didn't put up a fight as the security team grabbed him, escorting him out of the VIP section. His face reddened with humiliation as the room watched in silence, the weight of his mistake settling over him like a crushing wave. His career, built on years of security work, was likely over in an instant. No one would hire someone who had assaulted a woman, let alone the wife of one of the most famous men in the world. The bodyguard was ushered out of the venue, his head hung low as the guests murmured amongst themselves. The incident had stunned everyone into silence, and even as he was taken away, the echoes of his mistake reverberated through the crowd. Will, still standing tall, turned to Jada. His anger hadn't faded, but now there was only concern. He walked over to her, his eyes softening as he reached out to check on his wife. "Jada, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, but it carried the weight of his emotions. Jada nodded, though she was clearly shaken. Her face still flushed from the slap, but her strength was unwavering. She smiled at him, a quiet reassurance in her eyes. "I'm fine, Will," she whispered, grateful for his protection, but also for the moment they could share together in the midst of the chaos. The aftermath was swift and unforgiving. As the bodyguard was led away, whispers began to spread, and within minutes the story hit social media. It didn't take long for news outlets to pick up on the incident, and soon the world knew what had happened. Videos and photos of the altercation flooded the internet. The clip of Jada being slapped by the bodyguard spread like wildfire, causing an outpouring of reactions from fans and followers. The public's response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans of Will and Jada rallied behind the couple, expressing outrage over the bodyguard's actions. Social media was filled with support for Jada, with hashtags like Justice for Jada trending worldwide. People couldn't believe that such a thing had happened, especially to someone as respected and beloved as her. There was an outpouring of sympathy for Jada, who had been subjected to both the physical assault and the violation of her personal space. Outrage poured in from every corner. Comments flooded news outlets, with many people demanding accountability, not just for the bodyguard, but for the system that allowed such behavior to go unchecked. Some even called for a broader conversation about how people of influence are treated differently than the average person, especially women of color. It was clear that the public was united in their anger over what had happened, but the emotional toll on Jada was profound. Despite the public support, she couldn't shake the feeling of violation. The slap, the force of being dragged, it all lingered in her mind. She was a fighter, a woman who had faced adversity before, but this was different. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the emotional weight of being treated like an outsider in an environment where she should have been safe. Will, ever the protector, stayed close by her side, offering support and reassurance. His anger had not subsided, but he too was focused on helping Jada process the event, making sure she felt safe and valued in the wake of it. As for the bodyguard, his fate was sealed. Within hours, the event organizers released a statement condemning his actions. He was immediately fired and escorted off the premises. Arrested for assault, he faced public disgrace, his career likely over before it could ever recover. He had made a split-second decision that had ruined his life, and no one would forget the name of the man who had assaulted Jada Pinkett Smith. The aftermath of the incident didn't take long to unfold. Within hours, news outlets were buzzing with headlines about the shocking altercation. Social media exploded with posts, videos, and reactions from fans and onlookers. The story spread like wildfire, sparking widespread discussions about the shocking behavior of the bodyguard and the treatment of Jada. Public reaction was swift and overwhelming. People from all walks of life, from celebrities to everyday citizens, rallied behind Jada. There was a wave of support for her strength and resilience in the face of such aggression. Many expressed their anger at the bodyguard's actions, condemning the violence and demanding justice. The incident became a rallying cry for those who had ever been disrespected or mistreated. Jada, though strong, couldn't escape the emotional toll. The slap had stung, but it was the violation of her personal space, the humiliation, that hurt the most. Will, ever the protector, stood by her side every step of the way. His concern for her well-being was palpable, and the emotional weight of the situation was heavy for them both. As for the bodyguard, his fate was sealed. He was fired from his position immediately, arrested on the spot, and faced public disgrace. His career was over. The damage was done. In the wake of the incident, Will Smith released a public statement addressing the situation. He spoke out about the importance of standing up for the ones you love, emphasizing that no one, regardless of their status, should ever be treated with disrespect or violence. I stand by my wife, Jada, and will always protect her with everything I have, Will wrote in the statement. What happened that night was unacceptable. No one should ever have to endure such treatment, especially in a place where they should feel safe and respected. It's not just about us, it's about everyone who faces unfair aggression. We need to create a world where accountability and respect are the standards, not exceptions. He called for change, urging society to stand up against mistreatment and to hold those in power accountable for their actions. Will's words resonated deeply with the public, reinforcing his stance as a champion for respect, love, and justice. The incident had sparked a conversation, and Will was determined to keep that conversation going. The events that unfolded that night were shocking, but they carried a powerful message. We must always stand up against injustice, no matter the situation. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their status, background, or who they are. Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith showed us the true meaning of grace under pressure, turning a traumatic moment into a teachable one about accountability and love. Their response wasn't just about protecting each other, it was about sending a message to the world. Remember, respect is non-negotiable. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.